Okay, well, hello. My name is Alex Klein. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Kano. We're about 3.5 years old. We're a creative computing company. We're quite well known for our first kit, which became the most crowdfunded learning invention ever on Kickstarter in 2013. Kano, a computer encoding kit for all ages all over the world. But I personally never really expected that I would be in a situation like this in the august halls of the Next Web Amsterdam talking about a business. Although to this day we've sold 85,000 units to 86 countries, at the beginning it was just a small hand-folded white box with a book. And it came from my ambiguity and confusion over the answer to this question. And you know, it's one of the first questions we all get asked. It's one of the first questions we remember. What do you want to be when you grow up? And I was one of those kids who never had the answer to it, as I'm sure many of you were as well. At first, I saw the movie The Matrix when I was 10 years old, and I really, really deeply wanted to be a hacker like Neo in The Matrix. I had the sense that the real world around us might really be some kind of simulation governed by rules that only the great and the good, the elite, could understand. Unfortunately, I went online, I tried to learn how to program. I showed up in forums, and I asked basic questions, and I was spammed and griefed. People saying like, oh, this is a stupid question. What are you, 10 years old? And I was 10 years old, so it was depressing, and I decided not to be a hacker. I did learn a bit of code, though, and I tried to be a generative artist. I would make little visualizations with code, just using algorithmic techniques to make visual art. Didn't work out. I ended up becoming a writer. I was a reporter on business and technology for Newsweek, Daily Beast, The New Republic, and New York Magazine. And this was when I actually started to find something that I felt like I could be. You know, someone who tells stories, goes out, asks questions, takes complicated topics like at the time it was the financial crisis, credit default swaps, CDOs, hedge fund derivatives. Complicated topics in tech, you know, these multi-billion-dollar fundraisings, you know, what actually is going on behind the scenes at some of these privately held unicorns. I thought I could tell these stories, and I think in the world today, which is growing increasingly complex and strange and out of reach for most people, there's a need for not just disruption, which probably brings a lot of us here, but explanation, you know, curation. So I became a writer. Unfortunately, this was in 2012 when the journalism industry was like completely falling apart. It was losing its business model. It was losing its soul. I remember at Newsweek, the magazine I was at the time, they kind of pivoted my focus and others away from investigation and real journalism into aggregation, clickbait, judging journalists really just by traffic rather than the substance of their explanation or story. So eventually, like many under the age of 25 in my generation, I felt that what I would end up being when I grew up was unemployed, like about 25% of people under the age of 25 in Europe, at least when we started in 2012. Fortunately, I'm not unemployed, at least as far as I know. The board could be meeting right now to get rid of me on account of things I say in this talk. But I'm very privileged, very proud to be working in East London with a group of 46 multidisciplinary misfits representing 20 nationalities, artists, engineers, marketers, operators. And we're building a new type of computer company, a computer company premised on creation, not just consumption. This is our first kit. This video should show you kind of how it works. This is the kit as we sell it today. It's based on a simple brain, a small Raspberry Pi, which you've all heard of, but rather than giving it naked and raw to a young person, we give you a set of pieces, speakers, USB dongles, cases, stickers, cables, and most important, a step-by-step storybook that shows you how to put them together. Once it comes to life, and any 6-year-old can do this. Any 81-year-old can do this. Once the computer comes to life, the real journey begins. You're thrown into this code learning OS that we built ourselves, open source on top of Debian Linux, where you make music with code, you make art with code, you make games like Pong and Snake, you hack Minecraft rather than just playing it, creating castles, drawbridges, magic carpets. All of your creations are shared to our online platform, which Wired described as something like a kid's GitHub, where they don't just sit there, they become tutorials and challenges for other kids to follow. You'll see here, grab a screen and bring it to life. So this girl, Imani, age 8 in London, you see it comes to life. You go down the rabbit hole by typing computer commands, much like in The Matrix. She's one of 85,000 in 86 countries who have built and coded their own computer with Kano. We focus on the computer arts as much as the computer sciences. We've all heard of this pressing need to get every kid in the world, every person to learn how to code, right? I often think that this is presented in a really exclusive way. It's like, learn how to code so you can become a millionaire. Learn how to code so you can get a job. It's not really about understanding what's going on inside these devices that are slapped to our thighs that govern our lives every day. So we're trying to unlock that curiosity, let you express yourself, and then maybe you'll become a developer later. I don't mind. I just want you to feel a sense of control. So that's the original kit. In this talk today, I'll tell you a little bit of the story of how it came about. As I've already probably explained, I was completely unqualified to do any of this. And if there's one theme for this presentation, it's focus on doing rather than being. You may think, I don't have experience in this or that. Just go for it. The assets are available. At least in our case, and many of us who work together now on Kano, we come from disparate strands, and it's the doing that matters more than the being. So, as the wonderful introduction intimated, Kano, the computer kit, actually started with a challenge. The challenge came from Mika, my little cousin. He's the boy to your left. When he was 6, I had left Newsweek. They had killed a story I was working on because they were worried they were going to be sued by the Church of Scientology. I'd done a big investigation on a real estate scam they had going on, and they were threatening to sue, so Newsweek killed the story. I left Newsweek. I went to go to grad school in the UK, where my little cousin lives. I met the inventor of the Raspberry Pi, Eben Upton, this little green circuit board. At the time, hackers, hobbyists, developers were sending it into space, under the ocean, making Bitcoin miners, Beowulf clusters, robots. They had expected to sell 20,000 of these. They'd sold 1 million in the first year, and Eben, the inventor of this board, the Raspberry Pi, looked across the table to me and he said, "Alex, you're a young guy, you're a journalist." I was originally going to write a story on him. Why aren't more beginners and kids into this? I just don't understand. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, I understand why. It's too naked, it's too raw. It doesn't come with anything you need to get started. The materials are dense and impenetrable. There's a need, but there isn't the desire, right? So I showed it to my little cousin Mika. I similarly tried to get him excited about being a hacker, taking it into space. His challenge was way more simple. I want to make my own computer, but it has to be as simple and fun as Lego. So no one teaches me how to do it. And that part, no one teaching him, that was important. And this urge, how to make a computer, how to build a computer, it seems so simple. You type it into Google, all over the world people are feeling this. People feel estranged from their devices. We've got in our pockets the most powerful computing devices in history, exponentially more powerful than the mainframe that took Apollo to the moon. But only a tiny fraction of us, 1% of 1%, can do anything more than swipe, tap, download, consume. So it's present, this desire, in the young people, but I think it's also present in all of us. 8.2 billion connected devices, only 50 million of us who can really talk to them, manipulate them. I remember when I was at New York Magazine, I was reporting on Occupy Wall Street, right? And the protesters, you guys remember Occupy Wall Street, right? Yeah. So the protesters, they were very nice to me, by the way. They invited me into their tents. I got to talk to them, and they had this avowed skepticism and anger towards the big banks, the hedge funds. They didn't give much time and thought, though, to the big tech companies. They would open up their iPhones, open up Twitter, and tweet, hashtag OWS. And it just made me think, these technology giants, they control the information architecture that runs your mind, that runs my mind. Perhaps inequality, socioeconomic inequality, has as much to do with our digital accounts as our checking accounts, and that finance was getting all the heat, but perhaps a democratization was needed in the technology side as well. After all, we don't want to end up in a future like this, where everything is designed by Apple in a closed lab in California. The rules of our world are governed in ways that we, the people, cannot understand. And so this urge compelled me to answer Mika's challenge, bring a group of people together. I got teamed up with this incredible entrepreneur, my co-founder Yonatan Raz Friedman, an Israeli guy, and he set to work putting together the physical pieces while I started to work on the storybook, the design, and the message to bring it together into a simple computer kit. By the way, we didn't invent any of this anew, right? We took the Raspberry Pi, we took existing components and cables, keyboards, we curated them, we bundled them, we explained them. We had elements that were cheap, open, physical. And by the way, this is the next stage for computing. If you look around the world right now, smartphone sales are flatlining, right? People are, Apple's innovative gene or muscle or whatever it is has stopped working. It's just like bigger iPads, yeah, great. But this is the next phase for computing. Cheap, open, physical, and you make it yourself. I'll put money on it. But it's not simple yet, right? This was the Raspberry Pi for Dummies guide. This was supposed to be for dummies. It was 432 pages long, black and white photos, tiny font. The user guide, similarly, 237 pages long. So there was a lot of power there, but it wasn't simple for a person in the mainstream to access. And when you think about it, this is the Raspberry Pi 1 we were working with, a circuit board that at the time in 2013 was 4 times as powerful. This thing, 3 years ago, 4 times as powerful as the fastest computer in the world in 1973, the Cray supercomputer that sold for like $3 million, and only cost $35. Since then, by the way, this is the Raspberry Pi 3, 10 times as powerful, so that should really say 40 over there. So what happens when you put this in the hands of a rising creative generation and you make it truly as simple and fun as Lego? We could be on the verge of a serious change in what it means to be a genius. I think these kids are going to outstrip us, maybe even while they're still kids. So that's some of the founding team. Mika's dad, my little cousin's dad, Sol, he lent us enough money to make 200 prototype kits. Above me there is Jonathan, my Israeli co-founder. To the right of me, an incredible guy, Alejandro Simon, Spanish guy, came to us from the PlayStation 4 team as our first employee. A lot of the gamification aspects of the software, where you level up, you earn new code blocks by completing challenges, they come from his mind. We knew this had to feel as addictive and compulsive as a game. We started bringing in components from China, packaging, cardboard. They arrived at a little North London flat where Jonathan and I had moved in together. And this was the first version. We focused as much on the packaging in the books as anything else. Indeed, the book that explained to the young person how to put the pieces together and on each page had a simple step, that was the UX. People talk about conversational UX. Well, one of the best types of UX is a book, right? Especially a book that only has one action on every page. So this was the very first introduction. This was sitting on the floor of the playroom with Mika, my little cousin, trying out lines. This is what a computer looks like before it's born, a naked board with a brain that does nothing until, well, I have to mention another one of the early team. This is Tommy. We found him in the woods of North Sweden. He was on Dribble. He was from a town called Westeros. He took Westeros for you Game of Thrones fans. He took what was a set of ideas, words, and messages, and he created a gorgeous visual identity with which we're quite well associated now. First Kano HQ. I'll speed through this stuff. We hand-folded these 200 cardboard boxes, got tons of paper cuts in the process, stuffed them with bits, boards, cables in the book. And this is Mika looking at the PDF on the screen, booting up the Raspberry Pi for the first time after having built his first computer. It was a real wow moment. There was no special software on the screen. There was no cute Cody mascot to say, hey, use Python to unlock the worlds of programming. There's none of that crap. It was just the real Linux terminal. And we showed him and explained to him what a terminal was, kind of like magic spells that you can use to control the computer. And then we just stepped him through writing a few of them. Sudo apt-get install Minecraft. He installed Minecraft, played Minecraft. How to pull down a YouTube video from the cloud. We kept it real. This was our first website, only 200 kits available, a computer anyone can make, Raspberry Pi inside, buy now, and there should be an animated GIF here. Well, if the animated GIF worked, you'd be seeing a series of images in graphical interlace format, but you're not, I'm afraid. You're seeing one closed box. But I will make it up to you, because I'll show you a video. This was the very first marketing video that we ever did. This is a monkey named Lily, a rhesus macaque. The message we were trying to deliver in this video is that we all greater apes have an urge to look inside. We all have this innate curiosity, and these perfect, polished, hermetically sealed screens, they don't allow us to do it. This was my old MacBook, by the way. And Lily tore the MacBook to pieces. Of course, there was some Hollywood magic here. We put, there was some good editing. But this was our very first video. We did it on the cheap. I still have the invoice that says, for the hire of one monkey, which is an invoice I'll always remember. And on this video and on the fun that people experienced building the kit, we sold out on word of mouth. We started taking it to schools, workshops, hack spaces, artists' classrooms at places like Central St. Martin's, all over the world. We didn't just do this in the Western world. We went to South Africa, Sierra Leone, we went to Israel, we went to Southeast Asia, and wherever we went, no matter who you talk to, anyone, any age, you could ask them 3 questions. You know, question 1, have you ever seen the inside of a computer before? Actually, be interesting to ask. Who here's seen the inside of a computer before? Okay, you're all techies though. So you're well ahead. Question 2 is, who here could tell me in a few words how a computer thinks? Oh wow, you gotta have a go then. We'll come around to it, yeah. And there, actually, funnily enough, it was flipped. When you ask kids what's inside, who's seen the inside of a computer, none had seen it. They'd only seen these flat, polished screens. But when you ask them, how does a computer think, the hands just went, whoa, way up in the air, and they started saying incredibly imaginative things like, oh, it sends magic waves to YouTube, or, oh, it talks in a secret code under the ocean. And so there was a lot of excitement, but no understanding. And question 3 we would always ask is, who here can make a computer? And of course, no hands, crickets, tumbleweed. But of course, with just a simple story and the book, an hour later, these kids who'd never seen the inside of a computer before had made one. They'd brought it to life. They'd done real shell commands in the Linux kernel. They'd brought Minecraft into existence and brought a video down from YouTube. Very basic, but this sense of empowerment and accessibility and ownership, it carried through, and it made them want to come back to the device over and over. So we started to work on the industrial design, right? We didn't want this to look intimidating, and I think a lot of people in our industry, tech, we intentionally, because we're so smart, right? Like we try and make the things we do seem really woo, you know, like hackers in the basement, social network. We tried to avoid that. We wanted the hardware, the pieces, the dramatized unboxing to feel really human, Lego-like. But also mainstream. The colors were chosen for gender ambiguity, regional ambiguity. See, it starts to take shape here. This is the first version of the book. We translated the content into 10 different languages because we were doing workshops all over the world. Let me see if I got it. It's Arabic, Chinese, French, German, Brazilian Portuguese, Italian, Spanish, Hindi, English, of course. I believe there's one more I'm forgetting, and no Dutch, sorry. Again, some more packaging. We really focused on the clipping elements, no soldering, no screwing. This is the case taking shape over time, the box taking shape over time. And boom, in November of 2013, we took it to Kickstarter. The kits cost us about $99 to make at the time, so we figured we'd ask for $100,000 so we could make 1,000 more after the first 200 and continue testing them around the world. We put it online. We shot a little video in a playground near our office. The video wasn't uploading at the launch party. I was like tethering to my phone to try and get it to work. We hit the green button, and then, oh, wow, this is something. We started looking, it kept rising and rising. We're like, oh, we could hit our $100,000 goal in like a week. So I got on a plane to come back to the US, where I'm from England, but I've spent a lot of time there to see some friends. By the time my plane had landed 6 hours later, we were 13 hours into the campaign. We'd beaten our $100,000 fundraising goal. By the end of the 30 days, we'd raised $1.5 million from backers in 86 countries, including Steve Wozniak, actually. And by the way, a lot of people on Kickstarter now are raising big amounts, but for a learning invention, for a socially oriented invention, I think we're still holding our own. I think, at least I'm sure there's some other stuff as well. So yeah, what else? Yancey Strickler, the founder of Kickstarter, he backed us. People from the Obama administration. Then we had a challenge. We had to make 15 times as many kits as we expected. None of us had manufactured new product at scale before, and hardware is hard. We set up our own sourcing in the southern industrial region around Shenzhen. We completed the content in the books. We continued to workshop the kits around the world, as the original promise for the business had been a computer encoding kit for all ages all over the world. Went to Nairobi, Freetown. This young man, Kelvin Doe, when he was 12, he started pulling electronic components out of the trash in the streets in Freetown, where he lives. He went to an internet cafe and looked up what each of the components did. By teaching himself, he learned how to wire them together and made a battery to keep the lights on in his house when the grid went down. 2 years later, he'd built his own radio station and was broadcasting tracks across Sierra Leone. He does something similar with the Kano computer kit now. This generation, as I say, is outpacing us now. But the tools we're giving them, which are closed and impenetrable, designed by geniuses in a lab, they don't give them that way to explore and create with the substrate of computing itself. Not just to paint on a screen, but to actually use computational techniques or scientific techniques, in Kelvin's case, to shape the world around them. We've had kids on Kano use it to make to automate the position of solar panels in Kosovo. Families to make time-lapse cameras to capture flowers blooming. To veterans of Operation Desert Storm use it to make a server, host a website, and get a new job. So this is why we call ourselves a creative computing company. Kids like it, they get it now, but increasingly the story is about expanding to beginners of all ages. Here's us in HQ. We did ship only 4 months late. 4 months late, we shipped the first 20,000 kits in September of 2014. It's pretty astonishing what people came up with. This young man, his mom emailed us and said, "Hey, can you send us a new Kano box?" And we were like, "Why?" They're like, "Oh, well, my son, he sleeps with the box in his bed every night because he loves that he was able to build a computer." So we sent a new box, and he still sleeps with it. There's Kelvin again. He's set up an innovation lab with our help in Freetown, Sierra Leone. We've also done innovation labs, sort of a mainstream maker fest with children of refugees from the Syria crisis. We think that human potential is evenly distributed. It's just locked away by economics or geography. And so we think with low-cost creative computing that anyone can make, you can unleash it. If you want to check out some of the software things, the content things that kids are making with Kano, open up your phone if you don't have it out already, go to world.kano.me. So this is our sort of online community where people of all ages share arts, Minecraft hacks, music, graphics, even interactive apps, weather apps, apps that track the position of the space station in the sky. They've shared over 16 million lines of code. It's an astonishing place where you'll see exactly what this next generation is capable of. Of course, the hardware inventions as well. And look, I guess I'll close it by saying, you know, I started not knowing what I want to be when I grew up, and I still don't really know what I want to be, and I hope that many of you don't either. But I think we're all here, and we're all interested in maybe technology, if that's why we're here, in these 4 everywhere forces that are reshaping the world. The first is cheap, low cost, accessible, verging on free, Moore's law playing out. The ability for a Maori tribesman after he goes on his 3-hour morning walk to get water to pick up a computer that's 40 times more powerful than the most powerful computer in the world 20 years ago and share his story with someone around the world. Cheap, accessibility, low cost, simplicity. People don't want easy, I think. I think that was the Apple approach. It's like, it's all easy, it's really easy, it's not difficult. But I think people want to participate in technology deeply, understand it deeply, but in a simple way, taking the time to step you through. Physical computing. You know, we experiment at Kano not just with building PCs. We also have a low-cost HD screen kit that you can get, also $149. Lets you build an HD screen. We experiment with cameras, sensors, motors, actuators. All of these are spilling out of the Chinese supply chain, but nobody yet has made them mainstream, has made it simple and fun for anyone in the world to make and play with them. And the last force is openness. We obviously use a lot of open source code in our product. We contribute back to the community. We're entering a world where people can freely, democratically manipulate the most powerful tools that mankind has by logging on, reading the documentation, checking it out. But we have to make this accessible to the rising generation. The open source community today is in some ways quite niche. Like, it's hard to get in. Like when I was 10 and asking questions on that programming forum and was told to basically screw off. there's still a bit of a niche built around buzzwords in tech today and in open source. So openness, we got to do it. Making is going mainstream. We all yearn to, whether we're a monkey or an entrepreneur, we all yearn to look inside, take control, make and play. Just look at the International Space Station from whence this photo was taken. A year ago, they switched their laptops to run Linux open source code below the continent of Africa, where 1 billion people will come online in the next decade. So a new creative generation is rising. It's about what you can do and doing it with heart rather than what you can be, what boxes that you can check. Thank you very much for listening. Check us out, Kano.me. I'm Alex. Thanks.
So Alex, one question. So kids clearly get very excited about this when they first get access to it, but do they keep using it? Or is there kind of a pathway that they take where they move on from Kano to something else?
What we find is there's actually very strong and sustained retention on the device. So even 60 days later, about 20% of our audience is still checking in with us regularly. I think the reason why is it's a real computer. So they can use it to do their homework, they can stream videos, they can browse the internet. So the place we're occupying in their lives, and of course we need to keep improving, is as my first PC. And the intent is that they'll never have to move on to a second. But that's, of course, a huge challenge.